My name is Linda Kirker. I host the program, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate that. I hope you're a regular viewer, and if not, maybe after tonight you will be. I want to start the show off with a couple of quotes. I shared them last week, but in case you weren't participating, I love these two quotes. They're very short. The first one is, "A bad attitude is like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere until you change it." And the other one is, "The secret of your future is hidden in your daily routine. What you do with your life." Okay. Now, I would like to, before I introduce my guest, I would like to tell you a quick little story. I was receiving numerous pieces of mail about term limits. And the people who were sending these to me and the organizations who were sending this information wanting me to support term limits for Congress were people I admired. And yet I had qualms. I was not quite sure that I was on board with having term limits or the process, because I was afraid it might be a runaway train and just go off the rails. And so, not have the protections. So I took it upon myself to read one of the mailings I got, and at the bottom was a phone number for U.S. term limits. So I, being who I am, I called up and I left a message stating how I was feeling about this issue, and I wanted some confirmation, perhaps, that my fears were unfounded, my concerns were unfounded. So lo and behold, I received a phone call from a man named Ken Quinn. And Ken Quinn happens to be my guest tonight. We've spoken a couple of times on the phone, and when I mentioned that I had a TV show, he said, "Gee, could I come on and share with the public about this process that's so important for amending our U.S. Constitution?" So I said, sure, why not? So here he is. He drove 5 hours all the way from Maine to get here, which impresses me greatly. And he's devoted to the cause that he supports, and nothing can be better than that. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Linda, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. We haven't met before, but we're just chatting away, and I know that the folks are going to learn so much tonight. There are things I like to consider myself fairly informed about the Constitution, which I keep with me all the time. But I'm going to learn a lot. I've already learned a lot from you, from materials you've sent me. But I'm eager and excited for you to be able to share with the public about so many things about the founding of our Constitution, the founders and the process and the amendment process and how it works and why it's a good idea. So with that, would you like to tell us, first of all, about the history of U.S. term limits? And in the 1990s, there were efforts to put term limits on Congress?
It's a great history, and I want to thank you for making that phone call to us, or else we never would have had that discussion.
You never know what's going to happen when you reach out.
Exactly.
You just don't know.
Exactly. And I can share a little bit about my background. We come from a similar background in regards to this issue.
Okay.
But I'm a regional director with U.S. Term Limits. I cover pretty much Maine out to Iowa, Missouri, that whole north section of the country. And U.S. Term Limits has been around since 1991.
Okay.
And our organization is led the charge back in the early 90s. I don't know if you recall this or not, but the states back in the 90s were really pushing for term limits. And 23 states passed laws Okay.
Okay.
Most of these were at the ballots by ballot initiative. 23 states passed state laws putting term limits on their own congressional delegations.
Interesting.
Very interesting. And also 22 states, I believe it was, put term limits on their state legislatures. Okay, so back in the 90s, term limits was really the buzz. And our organization helped really to forge that ahead. And so we are probably the leader. We are the leader in this effort. And term limits is the number one issue that most Americans want, and they've been wanting it for decades.
And I can understand that because we take Vermont. Yeah. We have two of our congressmen, both of our senators actually. One, Senator Leahy, who's been down there for 44 years. Yeah. And then Bernie Sanders, I don't know, it's in the 30s somewhere. And I think it's time that we revolve that door.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And so what happened after the states passed these laws in 1995, the Supreme Court, in the case U.S. term limits versus Thornton, so it was against us, they overturned all of those state laws.
No kidding.
Yeah, and what the court ruled was that the only way the states can put term limits on their own members of Congress would be through the amendment process found in Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution.
Okay.
And so that overturned all of those laws. And so we are now working through the amendment process using Article 5. And for those that are not familiar with Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution, it's actually one sentence. I learned this from one of our colleagues. They had very long sentences back in those days. And basically there's two ways to propose amendments. Either 2/3 of both houses would need to pass the amendment and then propose it out to the states.
So in Congress, the House and the Senate.
Yeah, so Congress actually is the House and the Senate. It's combined. So the House would need to pass it by 2/3 and the Senate by 2/3, and then they would send that out to the states to be ratified. And it takes 3/4 of the states to ratify an amendment. So today that'd be 38 states.
The state legislatures?
Well, this
or
is
the people.
Well, good question. Great question. So let's just cover the proposing first. The other method to propose amendments is the states can actually do it themselves. You need 2/3 of the state legislatures to submit an application on a particular amendment or topic. And then once Congress receives those applications, from today would be 34 states, then Congress must call a convention for proposing amendments. And then the states would then send commissioners to propose the amendment, vote on it, and then send it out to the states for ratification. So 2 ways of proposing, Congress or the states. And then on the ratification end of it, you would have, Congress really has only 2 ministerial duties in this entire process when it comes to the convention. They call the convention, which means once they receive 34 applications, they name the date, time, and place where the states will meet. So that's the call. It's basically, you think of it as an invitation. And then the second ministerial duty is they will determine how the amendment would be ratified, either by state legislatures or state ratifying conventions, which would be by the people. So that's how the process works. Now, both of those methods of ratification have been used before. The original Constitution was ratified by the people in conventions, not the legislatures. And we now have 27 amendments. All of them have been ratified by the state legislatures except for one. Do you happen to know which one, by any chance? It's the 21st Amendment to repeal prohibition. That was ratified by the people in conventions. So we've used the process before, and it works very, very well.
Well, I like the idea of the people being able to be involved.
I do too.
Because we're the ones who elect the people who are supposed to be representing what we, the majority, I guess, wants.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always happen.
It doesn't. And as we see today, we have a Congress that is broken and dysfunctional. And
I agree.
And the only way now, people say, we just got to elect good people and send them down to D.C. Yes, we need to elect good people. However, you cannot change human nature at the ballot box. And unfortunately, what happens when individuals get down to Washington, D.C., most of them go down there with good intentions. However, the way the system is, they start to change. And what term limits will do is keep fresh ideas, new people going down into that system so they don't become part of it. It's not a career for them.
It's not an old boys club.
Exactly.
You're there to represent the people of your state, not some organization that takes you by the hand.
Yep.
And I think that when you have turnover of the representation after a certain period of time that makes sense, then no one gets stuck in the turmoil, so to speak, or the things that might change your views away from what the people of your state want.
Exactly. And what our organization is working to do is we want a government of the people, for the people, and by the people.
Absolutely.
And the best way of doing that is have the government close to the people, where it's citizen legislators, not entrenched career politicians. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, what we have today are individuals in Washington. We no longer, they don't know what it's like to be living under the laws they're passing. They're so out of touch with their constituents. And unfortunately, they care more about their self-interests, maintaining their power and their party's power than getting. Look what's going on. We got $22 trillion of debts. We have a healthcare insurance crisis where, it's not being solved. We have an immigration crisis, and they're kicking the can down the road on all these issues.
They're avoiding them.
And you know why? They're avoiding it because they don't want to make the tough decisions, because they are afraid if they do, they will not get reelected. Mm-hmm. And so we got to break up this structure.
Absolutely.
And make it so that when people go down to Washington, when we elect these people, they go down there knowing they have a short period of time to go down there to get the job done that we elected them to do, and they're going to come back home and live under the laws they created.
Yes, they don't even have to purchase the health insurance that they're trying to force on us. And then there are other things I can't pinpoint at the moment, but that they don't have to abide by that we do. Mm. And I just think for the amount of days that they work when they're not out campaigning for president and not voting, they have an obligation to us.
Oh, do you know that 60 Minutes did a great report on this. If you go onto YouTube and you type in 60 Minutes dialing for dollars, they exposed what's taking place in Washington. It's basically a boiler room where 30 to 70% of the time that members of Congress are in D.C., they're on the phone dialing for dollars, raising money for their reelection in their party. And how the system works is this: they have all their names on a wall with how much money they've raised. The members that raise the most money, they get the key chairmanships. That's how it's done down there.
Oh my gosh.
And this is all out there, and this is
factual.
It's a racket. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so that's why they need to raise the most money so they get the best chairmanship or the key leadership roles. And it becomes this vicious cycle where now they've got the money from the lobbyists, the PACs. They are just raising money to get reelected, and they're basically
to get power.
They get power. They're not listening to the voter. They're listening to the funders.
I hardly ever hear of, I'm never notified when one of them is coming to the area here.
Of course not.
They come, but they come to a certain organization or a certain planned event for certain people, and I'm not one of them. I guarantee you.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to change, and that's what U.S. term limits are seeking to change, and the only way we can get this done is with an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Now, I don't have a lot of faith that Congress is going to pass an amendment to limit their own terms of office. Do you?
No, I don't. I have no confidence that they will do that.
So that's why we need the states to get this done. We need the state legislatures to pass our application.
And the people, and that's why we're doing the show tonight. If the people are going to have this opportunity, folks, then you need to be informed about this process and how it empowers you. Yes, turn a little bit so you can face there a little.
I don't know which camera I'm on.
Well, it's back and forth.
Sure, there we go.
But we need to make sure that we're informed and participatory. That's what the founders knew would have to happen. The people, the citizens, would have to be informed and participatory for our republic to continue to exist. And too many people today, unfortunately, it's not a priority.
Yeah.
They're expecting Congress to be doing the things that are in our best interest. But we have to be a watchdog.
Absolutely. Yep. And this process, this Article 5 process, is the ultimate check against this runaway federal government that we have. And this is why the framers, now you talk about how I got involved in this.
Yes.
I used to oppose this entire idea. I thought it was a bad idea. It would run away, you can't control it, would rewrite the Constitution. And I thought that way due to my ignorance. Okay, I was just listening to these extremist groups that want to protect the establishment. They want to maintain the status quo, so they don't want to change things. And so they create a lot of fear among state legislators. And so unfortunately, they've been very effective over the decades to prevent the states from doing this. And that's the camp I used to be in. What happened for me, Linda, was I started doing my own research, and I went back. I never looked at the Federalist Papers. I never read the notes at the 1787 convention to see why they put this convention mode in there. Mm-hmm. Once I did, it was unbelievable. I realized that the framers knew that the federal government they were creating would become tyrannical. It needs to have a check. Yep. And so this is a basically true federalism where the states can check the power. And they gave equal authority to Congress and the states to amend or propose amendments whenever necessary. And so it's time that we, the people, rise up and demand from our state legislators to take action and fulfill their duty, their constitutional duty. The states are the parents of the federal government. And so it's time, that kid's been out of control for decades now. Mm-hmm. It's time the parents start lay down the law and we start making some necessary changes.
And the people at large need to be informed.
Yes.
About what we're talking about tonight, because this would be a big step to have a what they call a constitutional convention for making an amendment.
Yeah, a technical term, the official language of Article 5, it's not a constitutional convention. It's a convention for proposing amendments or an amendment. So the two different types of conventions. A constitutional convention is called outside of Article 5, and that's to draft a new constitution. That's not what we're talking about. And that's what a lot of people, they'll call it a con. That's what the opponents like to call it.
Okay.
But that's not what it is. This can only propose an amendment to the current or current Constitution.
Okay.
Big difference.
Well, it's time.
It's time.
And
you better believe it.
It's past time, actually. And I didn't do the research up front when I was concerned. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about it and trying to figure out how could this go wrong, and how could this be a problem? Is this secure? This process secure to protect what the people really are trying to do? And that's when you came into the picture.
You had some very good questions. And those are the same questions I was initially the same boat as you were, and you're not there anymore.
No, I'm getting to be informed.
Yeah, because I was ignorant of our history. And this idea of this convention, it just concerns people so much. But really, once you understand our history, conventions of states have been happening since our founding. This is how the states dealt with problems. And even before our independence, it would be a convention of colonies. The colonies would meet, and then after our independence, the states would meet, and a state would call the convention, Each state would send their commissioners. They would deal like commerce issues, trade issues, Indian war issues. And the reason we had the 1787 convention in Philadelphia was because of the Annapolis Convention of 1786. That was convened on September 11th, 1786.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it was called by the state of Virginia. And the reason for that convention was to deal with commerce issues. And what happened was only 5 states sent commissioners. And they did not have a quorum. So what they determined, and they said, listen, we need to meet in Philadelphia next year. And it was not to deal with just commerce issues. It was to deal with taking whatever means necessary to render the federal Constitution adequate for the exigencies of the Union. That was a very broad call. Now this is one of the stories that people will tell you, that the Constitutional Convention of 1787 was called to solely revise the Articles of Confederation.
That's right.
Right? You've heard that story.
That's what I've learned.
Yeah, well, that's not true.
Okay,
that is not true at
correct
all.
me.
Yeah, well, the truth was the language of it comes from, if you read Federalist 40, it came out of the Annapolis Convention to take whatever means necessary to render the federal Constitution adequate. So that was whatever it takes, guys. That's what we got to meet. And what happened was 7 states, Virginia called the convention in October of 1786. Right after the Annapolis Convention, Virginia called it. So they issued the invitation to all the states to join them in Philadelphia. 7 states issued their commissions with that language from the Annapolis recommendation. It wasn't until February of 1787 that Congress, at the time, Congress basically endorsed the convention, and what Congress said was that they only wanted the articles to be revised. Okay, it had no binding power, it was just their opinion. Long story short, Linda, when the 12 states showed up in Philadelphia, 10 out of the 12 states gave their commissioners full power to rewrite the Constitution. Only 2 states limited their delegations, New York and Massachusetts, and the New York delegation went home. They said, listen, we're not allowed to participate in this, we can't go this far, so we left. So they left. Only Alexander Hamilton came back, but New York didn't have a vote at that point. They no longer had a vote at the convention. So long story short, all of the signers, 36 out of 39 signers of the Constitution had full authority to draft a brand new Constitution because their call was to preserve the Union and create a firm national government.
Well, they did a good job.
They sure did.
I have seen videos and so forth, and read about how they had their arguments, and I think it was Ben Franklin who wanted them to have a prayer. They were having so many arguments and disagreements, to have a prayer before each gathering, and it's our history. It's our country's history, and we're a part of that. We're not going to be around forever, but we have an opportunity to affect change for the better. When you were speaking a short bit ago, Ken, about how government has run amok, it's just not doing the job it was intended to do. And one of the things that drives me crazy, I have to throw this in, is that in the not the amendments, in the articles, I believe, where the role of the federal government is defined.
The enumerated powers.
Enumerated powers of the federal government do not include education or health care. And where are they meddling and controlling? Education and health care. Those need to be state-run things.
I totally agree. And that's why term limits is so important. If we ever want to get back to what the framers intended for our nation, we need to get people in Washington, D.C. And the only way we can get the people that can make these changes, because term limits is not the silver bullet. It's not going to make everything better.
Perfect, no.
But what it will do is we'll get people infused in the system who are going there knowing change needs to happen. And right now we're seeing a Congress that they are afraid of change. They like it. It really is not a swamp.
It's working for them.
It's working for them. It's a hot tub for these folks. It's a high-end luxury hot tub. They're enjoying their ride. They've got all kinds of perks. And so what term limits will do is break up this terrible system that we have right now that's dysfunctional. It's not working. And not only that, it will get more people engaged and involved in our government because more people will run for office. How often do you see somebody challenging a senator in a primary? Hardly ever.
Exactly.
And so more people will run. We, the voters, will have more options to choose from, so the cream will rise to the top.
And the people at large will be empowered.
Absolutely. And it will create a system where more people serve in the government, then they go back home and now they're living and they start to understand how this works, and now they're back home and that trickles down, that spreads. And imagine if we had a generation of people going to Washington, coming back home in their states and say, hey, listen, we need to fix other things. I want people outside of being an attorney in Washington. I want to see teachers and physicians, and we can have a greater variety of individuals serving us in Washington than we have today.
Is there any obligation, maybe it's implicit, for the people who are representing us in Washington, D.C., to come back to our communities or to hold meetings, conference, whatever, for the people to come and hear from them and pose questions? I don't see that happening. It's a rarity.
Yeah. Some do that. They hardly ever do. And as you mentioned, when they do it, it's very controlled.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. And so that's why this is so critical that the people get involved. We need, in fact, I would like to make a quick announcement. I have some breaking news.
Are you running for Congress?
No. But just so the folks in Vermont know that we do have a resolution. Our resolution was filed by Representative Bob Helm earlier in the year. It's RH11.
Yeah.
Okay, that's at the House Committee on Government Operations. But the breaking news is that on the way down today, I spoke to Senator Debbie Ingram, and she is now going to sponsor our Article 5 application in the Senate.
Fantastic.
So we need individuals calling their representatives, calling their senators, asking them to please support this. If people go to our website, it's termlimits.com.
Yes, we need to get that on the screen. So that folks can look it up.
Yeah, and we have a pledge for candidates and legislators to sign saying that they will co-sponsor and support our application. So we ask people to please send that to their candidates and their legislators.
UStermlimits.com, right?
Just termlimits.com.
Oh, termlimits.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did I write that? I want to make sure I have it right. Whoops, term limits. Okay, I'll rewrite it. Well, let me see. So there are many benefits to having term limits for the people, for the country at large, and even for the people who have been down there for so many years. I'm not saying they've all transgressed, but it appears that a number of them have.
Yeah.
They've been kind of co-opted by special interests, and that doesn't serve the people who elected them.
Exactly. And, you know, I don't want to say all politicians are corrupt. That's not my intention.
No.
But it's human nature, and you cannot change human nature at the ballot box. And that's why term limits will create an environment where these issues do not get out of control. Corruption will be reduced greatly because when new people see corruption going on in the behind the closed doors, right, they change that. They want to get rid of it. And so right now, we don't really have that. There's way too much. Well, here's a perfect example. Congress in 2012 passed the Stock Act. That act was to prevent insider trading from taking place, because a lot of that happens. These individuals in Washington, they know what regulations and what laws are going to affect what companies, and so oftentimes they will trade in stock to benefit themselves or their family or their friends. Well, they passed the Stock Act to stop all that. But you know what? We're seeing indictments take place this week for insider trading. So it really hasn't changed anything. And then they ended up gutting that law to make it easier and less transparent the following year. So we need people that will go to Washington, D.C. to clean up the mess, because we cannot expect the folks that are there now to do this. It just will not happen.
Some of them might.
Yeah, but it's not enough to get it done. That's the problem.
No.
Yep.
So getting back to the states.
Sure.
And the states voting for term limits. That's the legislature, not the people at large voting. Is that right?
That's correct. The state legislatures need to pass the resolution. It's called an application, but it's typically a resolution. And then once they pass it, they send it to Congress. And then Congress collects these. And what Congress must do, Congress has no say in the matter. Once 34 state legislatures pass an application on the same subject, Congress must call the convention to allow the states to meet to propose that amendment.
So if there is a particular topic,
yes,
like term limits for Congress, and that would be the House and the Senate, that is the issue that would be voted on by the state legislator, right?
By the commissioners at the convention.
Whoops.
Yeah, so how it works is that once the convention's called, once 34 states apply, Congress invites the states to send commissioners. All 50 states get to send commissioners.
Oh.
Okay. And then they draft, debate on the amendment. It's one state, one vote. Okay, it's not based on the population. It's one state, one vote. So it would take if all 50 states sent commissioners, it would be 26 to pass it. And then once it's passed, then it goes out to the states for ratification. And you still need 38 states to ratify it.
38?
38, which is 3/4. So this convention can only recommend. It cannot amend. It can only recommend a solution, propose the amendments, and then it still takes 38 states are needed to ratify it before it becomes part of the Constitution.
Okay, so it's the state, first of all, then it's Congress, and then it's back to the states.
Yeah, the states.
Process.
Yep, the meeting, and then the states' ratification. Okay. So to give you an idea of amendments, this is a question I love to ask individuals. It's fascinating. Take a guess, Linda, how many amendments have been just introduced, not passed by Congress by the 2/3, but just introduced by a member of Congress since 1789? Just give me a crazy number.
I'm guessing very few.
Want me to tell you?
A handful or less.
Over 12,000 amendments.
What?
Over 12,000 amendments have been introduced in Congress since 1789. This year alone, take a guess how many amendments have been introduced in Congress.
I'm afraid to guess.
60. 60 amendments have been introduced. Now, a lot of these amendments are great amendments. In fact, our amendment has been introduced. So we're going after both options. We're trying it through Congress, but we're also trying it through the states. Now, the amendment that we have in Congress is very specific. It calls for 2 terms for a U.S. Senator, 3 terms for a U.S. House member. However, in our application that we want the states to pass, we're not specifying how many terms. We want the states to have that discussion. So we left that open for the states to decide. So out of the 12,000 amendments that have been introduced, only 33 have been passed by the 2/3 needed in Congress. Okay.
2/3 of
both
the
houses.
states?
2/3, no.
Of Congress.
Of Congress. So 33 amendments have been passed by the 2/3 of Congress, both houses of Congress, and out of the 33, 27 of those have been ratified. We have 27 amendments, okay? Now, the first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights. Those were proposed by Congress, by James Madison at the same time, so it was a package, and the states got to vote on those individually, okay? Initially, it was 12 amendments. 10 got ratified in 1791. Our last amendment, the 27th Amendment, which was ratified in 1992, do you know when that was proposed? That was one of the original Bill of Rights amendments proposed by James Madison. Yes. And so that hung out there for over 200 years before it got ratified.
And what was that one?
That one dealt with congressional pay raises.
Oh, I think the people need to vote on that.
So we had the Bill of Rights, and then we had 17 other amendments after that. All of the amendments have been proposed by Congress. So all we're seeking now is this. We want the states to have the same opportunity Congress has taken advantage of 12,000 times. The states have never introduced under Article 5 a single amendment. They've never had the opportunity where an amendment can be assigned to a committee and hearings held and debate, and discussion. That's never happened. We've come close a few times to getting to the 2/3, but we've never reached the 2/3 mark needed to actually call the meeting for them to have a real discussion.
Wow.
So Congress, any day of the week, a member, get this, one member could stand up and propose or introduce any subject as an amendment they want. And they do it all the time.
And it seems off base to me that they can raise their own salaries.
Yeah, I know. Well, that was what the 27th Amendment tried to curtail, and they were not allowed to do that until after the election. So it kind of, yeah. But anyway, it didn't quite. Don't forget that was
doesn't pass
proposed in 1789. Yeah.
This is all fascinating. You could teach a course.
It's great history.
In fact, I don't know, what your time schedule is.
It was a 5-hour drive.
Yeah, I know. Folks, this young man drove here 5 hours from Maine to come on this show.
It's well worth it.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to have you here, and I appreciate so much that you were willing to do that. It's so important for the people of Vermont and other states to understand this and to become empowered.
Absolutely.
And so, folks, I ask you, I carry this with me, but if you don't have one of these constitutions, you can look up online, or you can call me and I'll get you one of these. I have a supply of them. Look up Article 5.
Yep.
And that's about amending the Constitution. And you're welcome to call in. The phone number isn't on there tonight. And it's 528-2628, I think. No. 578. Anyway, we'll have it up there on shortly. 528. Oh no, that's the old number. Oh, that's the number to call in. I'm sorry. That's another number. So feel free to call in and pose a question or make a comment. We'd be happy to hear from you if you're so inclined. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going.
One of the things I hear a lot is we need to get big money out of politics. And I totally agree with that.
I do too.
And one of the ways of doing that is with a term limit amendment on Congress, because I think it's 97% of corporate PAC money goes to the incumbent. Now, why do you think that is? Because they own them and they control them. They don't know who a challenger is. Why would they give huge amounts of money to a challenger? You know who Jack Abramoff is, right? He was the most well-known lobbyist who went to prison for what he used to do. He's turned the tide. He after he got out of prison, he now is telling folks how bad Congress is and what he used to do. And so he not only would give thousands and millions of dollars to Congress members, but when he wanted to get something really done, he would say, hey, listen, when you're done as a congressman, we've got a great position for you at our firm. And they would be able to get anything out of that congressman because that person knew he had a job. 50% of congressmen, when they leave Congress, become lobbyists, Linda. It's the revolving door. And that is what we have got to change.
Absolutely. Because the people need to protect themselves.
Absolutely.
it's very sad that this is happening. I won't attribute it to everyone who's in Congress.
No.
There are some people with, what's the word I want?
Principles?
Thank you, that'll do. And God bless them for that. But I think it's too much of a temptation to be there for so long. I'm patting myself on the back here, but when I was running for the legislature here in this state, and I had a phone call from a man who was raising money for candidates, and he wanted to know, would you accept money from this group or that group or whatever? And I said, I would probably accept a small donation from this one, but not this one, and from no one who is going to be tapping me on the shoulder when there's a vote coming up and saying, don't forget us, because that's not happening.
Yeah.
And that's what we need, not me, but that's the kind of philosophy that we need down in Congress.
Absolutely, and we need it. We need the people to rise up here in their states, here in Vermont especially, and call their state senator, their state rep, and say, listen, I want you supporting this. I want you sponsoring, well, not sponsoring, but co-sponsoring and voting for this.
Yes.
We want to have this discussion on behalf of the American people. In a recent poll, it was the McLaughlin Associates, 82% of Americans want term limits on Congress.
Wow.
82%. And that's 89% Republicans, I think I have the number, 83% independents, and 73% Democrats. So it polls extremely high regardless of political party.
So now what you're doing is what needs to be done, excuse me, and that is to make sure that people understand the process and the need for this to happen.
Yeah, and this is not a party issue. This is an American
No.
issue. It's about power, and we have got to
Power to the people.
Yeah, we got to flip it on Congress, and
Exactly.
we need to use the power. And it's time we woke up, stop being afraid of using the Constitution. My goodness, if the framers, if they saw us, think of our history. We had a small army of patriots take on the biggest Navy and Army in the world, and here we are, too afraid to have a meeting to discuss solutions. It's shameful.
It is. We need to stand up as citizens, and I agree that we should be calling our congressmen, our senators, and our lone congressmen, and asking them to convene a meeting or 2 or 3 around the state to talk with the public, to listen to the public about the fact that we want an amendment for this purpose, for term limits.
And our country's done it before. We have term limits on the president because of the 22nd Amendment. Okay, so we've done this. This is nothing new. And I think most people are very glad we have limits on how long a president can serve in office.
I didn't know which one. There's so much to know.
22nd Amendment,
President's term limit.
You know, there's a great quote by Thomas Jefferson when he, now he was not at the Constitutional Convention, but after he read the Constitution, he sent a letter to James Madison, and he said, there's 2 things I dislike about this. Number 1, you did not include the Bill of Rights. And number 2, you did not retain rotation of office, which is what they called term limits back then. And he said, especially on the presidents. And Jefferson became a strong advocate for rotation of office in his life. And well, Mr. Jefferson, I'm proud to say we got you the Bill of Rights shortly thereafter, and we eventually got you term limits on the presidents. Now we need to get term limits on the U.S. House and Senate, and it's time we do this. Stop talking about it.
Yes, I agree. You know, we're the ones, the citizens, living day to day in our states.
Yeah.
While our representatives for a good share of the year are in Washington, D.C. And it's definitely time. And I on this show, I try to encourage the viewers to step up, to get involved, and to not be afraid to take a stand. And so, folks, I would urge you to call our congressman or our congressman and our 2 senators, and at their offices. They have Vermont offices. They have an office in Washington, D.C. I have the numbers. I can provide those next time.
I'll save you some time. Don't bother calling Senator Bernie Sanders. I spoke to him. In fact, on our website, I asked him that question, and he is totally against term limits for Congress.
Sure he is.
Totally. So
government control.
So don't save yourself a dime. But to get back to this whole process, Linda, is the Article 5 convention process is really a little bit more history, because I think this is really important, is that out of the 27 amendments or the 33 amendments that were proposed by Congress, more than half of those started at this level through the state legislatures. It was because of the state legislatures wanting to call a convention that prodded Congress to propose the amendments instead. That's how we got the Bill of Rights. The very first Article 5 application was submitted by Virginia in 1789. Asking for a convention for the Bill of Rights, and that's what got Madison to ultimately propose those amendments. But we have a great example is the 17th Amendment. Now the 17th Amendment is the direct election of senators. Okay, it was ratified in 1913. Previous to this amendment, the U.S. senators were appointed by the state legislatures. Okay. Now, what happened was, I'm not going to go into the whole detail of why people wanted that, but the states decided they want to direct elect their senators. And so 29 states passed an Article 5 application for a convention to propose that one amendment. They came within 2 states shy of calling the convention. Back then, you only need 32 or 31. And what it did, it prodded Congress to propose that amendment instead. So this effort from the push by the people through our state legislators gets Congress's attention. And so as we get closer and closer to number 34 on this application, Congress is going to wake up.
How many states now? 20?
We need 34 states to call the convention.
Right. Right now, we don't have any?
Right now, our application has been passed in 3 states.
Okay.
But we have a total of 15 states currently that have the subject matter of congressional term limits in their applications.
Okay.
So we're making the case that those 15, they want to have this discussion. And so we're not halfway there yet, but we're getting there.
Well, I'm a big proponent of our elected officials gathering together with the people and having discussions, conversations about what's going on in the country, and the people letting our elected officials know where they stand and what they need, and how they feel, whatever. That's important.
Absolutely.
We're all in this together.
Yeah.
We don't have a bunch of elitists making decisions that appeal to them and maybe some people who are helping them out in one way or another. It's about the people of this country, and I would urge you, when the time is available for you to do it, to go to communities. I know this is one opportunity to reach people. But where people can ask you questions. And folks, we still have 12 minutes, or 11 minutes. So if you have a question for Ken, now's your moment.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'd like to inform the viewers, please visit our website. It's termlimits.com. I don't know which camera I should be looking at here.
This one.
That one. Go to our website, sign our petition. If you sign our petition, what that does is allows us to let your state legislators know how many people in their district support this, and it also allows us to communicate with you. So I'll be sending out emails to keep you informed of the progress here in Vermont. We do a lot of calls to action. We're going to need people to make contact with your legislators, come to the public hearing. So we have a lot of work to do. It takes a huge effort, and we need people showing up at the Capitol. And so while you're at our website, check out our podcast. Nick Tumbalidis, our executive director, and our president, Phil Blumel, they do a weekly podcast. If you really want to learn more about term limits and what we're up to, the podcast, I highly recommend.
Is it now a podcast?
It's a podcast.
I don't know what a podcast is.
It's just audio. You can. It's
Oh, okay. And it's on that website?
It's on our website. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm old.
And also we have Facebook pages. So every state has a Facebook. So Vermont Term Limits would be our state Facebook page.
Fantastic.
And so I'll be posting, this video right now is playing on that page. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we're live.
Now we are. Now, do you have an approach whereby you would try to find someone in each state who's willing to promote? Do you have someone in this state yet?
Well, I'm hoping it's going to be you, Linda. You know that was coming.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, well, that's what we need. We need volunteers of individuals getting involved, who, like a state director, somebody that can educate, do presentations, grow the grassroots. So we have different positions, and it's whatever you're comfortable with. But yeah, right now, I don't have somebody fill that role here in Vermont. So we need to talk when we're done here.
Uh-oh.
Because
I don't have enough. Did you?
yeah, well, that's the kind of person I want, because that's how I was.
You are so knowledgeable. Did you study this in a previous life? Or?
Well, see, I'm a sales guy. I used to just sell copier equipment. And so when I got involved in politics, and did I mention I was totally against this idea?
Yes.
Okay, so I came into this Article 5 area because I thought it would destroy our Constitution, it would rewrite the Constitution, and I actually handed out DVDs to legislators. It was titled Beware of Article 5. That's where I was coming from. And what happened was I did my own research. I actually read the Constitution. I read Madison's notes and realized why they put it in there. And a light went off, and I realized I shouldn't be aware of it. I need to embrace Article 5. This country needs to embrace it because the framers gave it to us for the very hour we're in, a way to check an overreaching federal government. And I would recommend for folks, go online and check the Federalist Papers number 40 and number 85, because those two...
Federalist Papers?
Yep, the Federalist Papers. Those were written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay.
I think I have it, that book.
Yep, you can get them online. It's not an easy read, but Federalist 85 goes into the very specific reason why the Article 5 Convention was put in. That was the last Federalist paper, and Hamilton's argument, he closes out the entire argument telling people, listen, we have the Article 5 Convention. If it gets bad, this is how we fix it.
Power to the people.
Exactly.
Now, you said 40 and 85?
40 and 85. Those are my two favorites when it comes to this issue.
The Federalist Papers.
Yep.
I'll have to see if I can find that book.
Yeah. So for folks that believe that the original convention ran away because they exceeded their authority, James Madison addresses that false charge in Federalist 40. Okay, so he refutes that completely. And then Federalist 85 talks about how the convention is limited. It's not an open convention. It's limited to the very topic that 2/3 of the states agree on, and that is it. It was designed to propose basically one amendment that the states wanted. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there. This is not a constitutional convention. You cannot draft a new constitution. You can only propose one amendment that the states agree upon ahead of time.
Okay.
And to give you a little bit of currents, how much time do we have, Linda? Because I can go.
About 6 minutes.
Okay. This is something I learned that I think is really neat, because these conventions no longer really happen anymore. We've never had a true Article 5 convention. However, in 1861, what was taking place? The country was about to go to war.
Civil War, yeah.
Okay. This is fascinating history. Well, Virginia wanted to prevent that from happening. So Virginia called a convention of states to propose an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. 21 states sent delegates or commissioners down to Washington, D.C. They met on February 4th, 1861. They met to draft an amendment to the Constitution, and they passed one. Now, because it wasn't called under Article 5, they couldn't propose it immediately to the states, so they delivered it to Congress. Congress sat on that amendment, and then the war broke out, and they waited too long. Mm-hmm. My point is, the process works. The country was divided, but the states came together with a solution to try to prevent the war from happening. Congress sat on it, and it didn't work. On that very same day, in Montgomery, Alabama, another convention was called, another convention of states. It was the Confederate States. They called a constitutional convention to draft the Confederate Constitution.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So on the very same day, we had two conventions taking place. One, a convention for proposing an amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and another to draft a brand new constitution for the states that seceded. So there you go. Two different types of conventions all took place on the same day in 1861.
Wow.
And today, every year, there's a convention of states. Did you know that?
No.
Every year, all 50 states participate. They meet for a week. Get this. It started in 1892.
Who goes?
Your state appoints commissioners. Most of the states, the governor appoints them. So it's an official convention of states. And it was started in 1892. It's called the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws. And they don't draft and propose amendments. They draft uniform state laws. Have you ever heard of the Uniform Commercial Code?
I've heard of it.
It came from this organization. And so every year, it's a limited convention. They meet, it's one state, one vote. It operates just like an Article 5 convention. Whatever they pass at the convention, they then bring back to their state legislature to be adopted as state law.
So it's more about joining forces than it is individuality.
Yeah, it's about making laws between the states uniform.
Consistent.
So they deal with a lot of financial laws, real estate laws, family laws. It was designed to make it consistent throughout the Union. And it began in 1892. So the rules we use every year, the process works. We've been using this process since our very founding. So it's nothing new.
Tell me again what the governor gets a group. What is this?
It's called the Uniform Law Commission.
Okay. So is it mostly lawyers?
Yes. Yep, they're appointed by the states, usually the governor. So every state has a handful of commissioners, and they draft uniform state laws. But it operates as an Article 5 convention. I attended one in Vermont a few years ago.
Okay.
The delegation
I never heard of it.
Yeah. And the rules are the same rules they've been using since 1892, and the rules they basically are identical to what a convention, Article 5 convention would be.
Okay, my friend.
Yes.
We're down to the last few minutes.
Okay.
So what have you not said that you want to say to the people, or just in general? Go for it.
All right, which camera? If you're listening, I need your help. We need to get this done. If you are sick and tired of career politicians in Washington, the only way, folks, we can do this is by rotating them out of office on a regular, consistent basis. I'm tired, I'm sure like you are, of getting the same two people to vote for every election cycle. We need a change. And if you want to see change in Washington, we need new people with fresh ideas. Go to our website. It's termlimits.com. Sign our petition. If you want to get involved, contact me. My email address is kquinn@termlimits.com. Go to our website under Take Action and select the Volunteer tab. There's a variety of ways you can get involved. I'm going to be talking to Linda about how to become a state director here in Vermont. But we need your help. We can't do this without you, the people. And if you are sick and tired of the same old, then this is what needs to happen. Let's use the Constitution the way the framers intended, and instead of just going through election after election thinking something's going to change, because it doesn't.
No, it does not unless the people change.
Let's change the system. Let's change the structure so that people cannot spend a lifetime in Washington getting filthy rich and just disregarding the needs of the nation, because I am sick and tired of it, like most Americans.
I think there's a lot of dissatisfaction in the Congress, with the people about Congress. And we'll have to band together, folks, and see what can be done. We're just about out of time. Ken Quinn, thank you so much for driving all the way here to come on the show. I really appreciate it. And
thank you, Linda.
we'll chat.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh, we will.
Oh, dear. Okay, folks, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again soon. Good night.
Bye-bye.